So this webinar is a build up to the World Oceans Day. So I'm going to try focus a bit on Ghana. You know, aside the air we breathe, the ocean is one resource that is shared across various countries, not just Ghana. We share with many other countries across the world, and it covers about 70% of our planet and provides about 50% of the oxygen we breathe. Not to talk about the food and other resources that it produces or it provides for us, the financial benefits we get from the oceans. Currently, our oceans are facing a lot of threats, a lot of challenges are being observed in our oceans. Wildlife are being killed by our own practices, illegal mining, causing our waters to be polluted. Our wetlands are also being encroached by human activities such as building, which is causing the coastal areas to also be degraded. So basically for today's webinar, we want to understand what is the current situations of our oceans in Ghana and across the country, across the world, to also get us understand the current things that are going on. Then we try to look at how locally we can take action to solve some of these problems or these challenges that are currently arising. What are people already doing? Can we learn from what is being done globally and even by some individuals, organizations, government institutions, even in Ghana, that we can see how best we can collaborate with each other to bring lasting solutions to some of these problems. Today we have on the call 3 speakers who will be helping us with our discussion. They will be doing presentation. They also join us for a panel discussion. Then we'll have a Q&A session where we all can ask our questions, any doubts, anything on our mind. We could share or we could ask so that they provide more insights on this. This webinar is being organized by the Wildlife and Human Resource Organization, and then some of the key partners that are supporting this webinar is the WHRO Young Scientist Group, the Coastal Association of Neighbors, the Pure Plastic Recycling Manufacturing Company, University of Ghana, ESL Consulting, MarCNoWA, GMES and Africa, and then the African Union. We also have Rocha and Gayu also supporting this webinar. Once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to quick start by saying that times past, I used to personally go to the ocean when I was stressed and I needed some relaxation or needed to clear my mind. But in recent times, I go to the beaches and all I do is weep because you see the nature of these oceans. And I ask myself, is this how it was some years ago? Can't I do something about this? What's really happening? What are the solutions? So this webinar is something that really resonates with me. And I'm hoping that even after a year, I believe that some of us also share the same sentiments when we currently visit our oceans. Recently, I was at a landing site and then they landed the net, and then the only thing I could see was a lot of plastics and just few fishes, which really hurt my heart. So to start up our conversation for us, we invite Dr. Agyekum Dr. Agyekum to do a first presentation. Dr. Agyekum is a faculty member at the University of Ghana. He's also the project coordinator. He's also the project coordinator for the GMES and Africa project at the University of Ghana. He is sorry about that. So Dr. Agyekum is a faculty member at the University of Ghana and is also the project coordinator for Africa Union's GMES and African project with the MarCNoWA project initiative. His research leverages on marine earth observation data, modeling outputs, and then vessel tracking, which is done to develop fisheries management, maritime security, and safety. His project provides early warning systems for fishermen and also for illegal fishing detection systems. It also helps to monitor oil spills across North Africa and West Africa, working with various stakeholders. Typically, what will make you know what Dr. Agyekum does is he works with his laptop and a satellite. That's mostly what he does. So for those of you who have passion for how satellites work, how we can use satellites to do some of these wonderful monitoring works, provide solutions for our coastal conservation. Dr. Agyekum is someone that is doing something related to that in that field. So without wasting my time, Dr. Agyekum, we invite you to take us through the presentation.
Hi, good afternoon from Accra. Thank you, Patrick, for the introduction. For today, we'll be talking about, I guess you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, please.
Perfect. Okay. So today I'm going to throw a bit more light on why the ocean matters to us, not just in Ghana, but then people around the world, because the benefits of the ocean is more or less shared, and the usefulness cuts across. So like Patrick had said, I am the project coordinator, where I coordinate an EU African Union funded project where we use satellite data and in-situ data to understand processes that drive fish distribution, and look at processes that affect shoreline, illegal fishing, environmental monitoring, and so forth. So I work with other partners in about, I think, 9 countries, where we develop solutions, we build capacity, we engage people in government to take up satellite data or EO data, Earth observation data, for resource management. So for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to broadly talk about why the ocean is important, why it's the wonderful things that the ocean brings to us, the benefits that we get from it, and the need to conserve such an important asset. So these slides shows how stunning our beaches are, the serene landscape that we get from the ocean, and the fringing ecosystems next to it. So on this slide, you can see how nice this beach is. This is a beach from, I think, some western part of Ghana. Just like Patrick had said, many times back, he would go there to clear his mind, but then do we have this serene environment at the moment? These are questions that we need to start asking ourselves, and we also have to start thinking of ways that will allow us to reverse the trend. Largely, a number of beaches and coastal systems within quite a number of countries are deteriorating, and I don't think it is something that we need to encourage. The ocean is also important because we get our livelihoods from the fish and the other many resources that we take from the ocean. In Ghana, there are about quite a number of landing sites, and a lot of women, and they rely on the catch from fishermen to take care of their families. They have to sell fish to be able to put food on the table, to pay for tuition for their kids, and to take care of medical cost. What this means is that if we don't have a pristine ocean environment, we can't have a blooming fish stock, and obviously there wouldn't be nothing for others to catch, for a fisher woman to be able to sell to make money. meaning it's imperative that as a country we start thinking of, and I think we are doing that, but then we need to better improve on our ways of ensuring that the ocean remains the go-to resource that would allow people to have to put money in their pockets to be able to fend for themselves. There are a lot of people in the artisanal fisheries industry, the semi-industrial fisheries industry, and the industrial fishing industry, and the machinery, the trading fish, the engagement, and all of that. That's what keeps them busy. So without the ocean, all of these jobs and the interactions that emanate from it wouldn't be there. And it's important we conserve and protect our ocean and coastal systems. Again, in our part of the world, in Ghana, I think about a decade and a half back, we discovered oil. So our ocean space is not just for fish or marine living resources. There are fossil fuels that we tap into to drive our economy. There are numerous nice places that people can visit for recreation, to understand the history of Ghana and so forth. The ocean provides all of that. Within our ocean space, our festivals are also tied to the ocean, the dynamics of the ocean. For instance, there is a festival in Greater Accra region called Homo, which is very tied to the availability of maize and fish. And you know, upwelling is very intense during June, July. So just about that time, we have this festival, and currently we are preparing towards that festival. So that what the point I'm trying to make is that if you have the maize and there are no fishes, obviously you can have a full blast of that festival. And it is important that we also engage our traditional leaders in our quest to ensure that the ocean remains safe, because I think their voices have the tendency of reaching further, getting people to know why it is important to do what we do. The ocean is important for our history, and these guys are very key in pushing that agenda. So in our quest to improve the resource management within the ocean space, it's not just about we scientists. We also need to engage other stakeholders, and the local authority is very important in this. My colleague Andy is very much involved in mangroves and wetlands management. Those coastal systems have the huge or the large biodiversity that we see within the ocean, because those areas are important nursery grounds for some kind of fishes. Turtles, for instance, comes around, and tomorrow we'll be going to Pram to go visit places like that and to help clean those areas, so that it's a bit welcoming for turtles to come lay their eggs and reproduce. In our quest to do all of this, we want to also maximize the benefit that these resources bring us in terms of financial gains. I mean, a lot of people travel around the world to come see turtles. So let's protect them so that we can have quite a number of people visiting our coast, so that we can benefit from that. So I've shown you a few slides on the relevance of why we need to ensure that the ocean space provides resources for us. We conserve the environment. We ensure that the resources that we utilize are sustainable. And we only have to do this because it's not just about us. It goes beyond us. There are younger people out there who would take over from us, and we need to ensure that there is something we are leaving for them. So we need to step out. We need to, blow that trumpet and say, guys, ensure the ocean is clean, safe, and the resources in there are sustainable, so that we can benefit largely from it. So one of the jobs that I do is, like Patrick had said, I use satellite for resource management. So just for you to know how we are also approaching this conservation intention, we use satellites to look at oil spill monitoring. We can use satellites to detect dark vessels that may be involved in illegal fishing. It's one way to do this, and it's about time developing countries start thinking of new innovations and technologies, and satellite is able to do that. In this example, I'm showing you screenshots of a service that we have that allow us to capture vessels at sea from radar imageries. We are also able to detect oil slicks, know the size of the slick. We can estimate the size of the slick. We can estimate the location of the slick. We can report when the slick was observed, because when the satellite passes, there's a timestamp and we can report that. All of these are information that environmental managers and fishery managers need to be able to protect the ocean, to better understand how our activities are impacting the ocean. The next slide you've seen here is how we use AIS data from fishing vessel traffic to identify periods and locations where two vessels come together, spend a lot of time, and that behavior is very, very similar to transshipment. So that the idea behind the service is that we report these behaviors, then whoever is in charge can query a system and identify these infractions and further investigate. I mean, the point I'm trying to make here is when we see these behaviors on the dashboard, it does not suggest outright that it's transshipment, but it sort of give you something to work with. And I think it's a useful service, and I would encourage a lot of people to start using it. We also developed services that allow us to ensure the safety of fishermen and coastal communities. So fishermen ideally will want to be out at sea almost every time. Then the ocean can be very hard. So we have to ensure that we are giving them information that would allow them to be safe at sea. So we provide some indices on the ocean states. Basically, we use flags and a USSD server and a web application to disseminate this information. So there are 3 colors that we use: green, yellow, and red. Green meaning that it's safe to step out at sea. Yellow means it's kind of rough, so be careful out there. And red, don't step out because the waves are too high and you will not be safe. So this is how we are bringing technology, geospatial technology, in improving our ability to use the ocean and to ensure that it is sustainable. So if you want to know more about what we do, we will share these slides. These are our social media handles and our websites. And thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agyekum. My take home was that it's about time developing countries and then youth like ourselves on this call move towards digital innovation. We can't always be on the grounds to monitor what is going on. So we can take advantage of these new technologies that are emerging so that we can make meaningful impact on the ground. Thank you so much, Dr. Agyekum. We'll quickly switch to Ms. Jacqueline. Ms. Jacqueline. So, Ms. Jacqueline, Mrs. Jacqueline, sorry, Mrs. Jacqueline works with WHRO Ghana. She is the monitoring, evaluation, and reporting manager for WHRO Ghana. She has over 10 years of experience. She has over 10 years of experience working in conservation development space. She has very rich practical experience in the areas of tropical research, natural resource management, and also working with rural communities across various landscapes in implementing community-based conservation projects. Ms. Jacqueline will be speaking to us about illegal mining, so that we also get to understand the impact of illegal mining on the oceans. So, Ms. Jacqueline, please, you have the floor. Mrs. Jacqueline.
Patrick, and good afternoon to everyone on the call. Patrick, are you projecting my slides?
Should I project it from my end for you?
I can't do the projection, so let me project it from my end.
Okay. So you can project from your end. You have access.
Okay. Okay. Please do let me know if you are able to see my slides. Is everyone able to see my slides?
Yes,
Yes.
I can see them.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So we thank Dr. Agyekum for that very exciting intro that he gave us on the benefits that we receive from the ocean. And he did mention in his presentation that besides the benefits, there are also some challenges that we experience on the ocean, like oil spills. Before I go into my presentation, I just want to give you a bit about what Rocha has been doing when it comes to marine and coastal spaces. So Rocha Ghana is a conservation organization that works both in the terrestrial as well as the coastal ecosystems. And along the coast, our work has been around the Munipomazi Ramsar site, as well as the Keta Lagoon Complex Ramsar site. And what we do here is to work with communities to restore degraded mangrove areas, to work towards the conservation of marine turtles, as well as enhance their livelihood through fuel efficient stoves, as well as other fishing interventions. And so when we see our oceans, or when we talk about our oceans, some of the exciting things we think about are the livelihoods that it provides to the fisher folks. In the screen, you can see that there's a group of young people who are pulling out their nets from the ocean. And this is a picture that I took myself at one of the beaches in Keta. It was really a sight to behold. And in other areas across Ghana, particularly in the western region, you'd realize that this is what our oceans are gradually becoming, polluted by mining. And why is it important for us to talk about illegal mining in our oceans? Because of how it influences the benefits that we get from our oceans. Ghana has, over the last 8 years, experienced a heightened activity in illegal mining. And that is polluting our water bodies, not only fresh water, but also our oceans. And this pollution is not only from turbidity, but also from chemicals. And that affects our marine biodiversity, particularly turtles that come to nest along our beaches, but also phytoplankton, which provides source of food for our fisheries. So if the fish have water that is polluted, they can't even thrive. And if the water that's supposed to be the source of their food, that food is also being destroyed, it means that we are having less and less fish in our oceans. For instance, mangroves along the coast where there's been high mining incidences, you realize that the mangrove resources that we have there are dying out of the high chemical pollution. And these have ripple effects on the livelihoods that fishermen and fisherwomen benefit from the ocean. Statistics have it that over 2 million fisheries dependent communities get their livelihood from the ocean. And the ocean alone, when you look at our coastal communities, about 60% of their protein supply is from fish. And the other thing that the people around the coast experience is unknown skin diseases. If we have been following the news, we realize that there were even issues of people using the contaminated water to prepare some delicacies that are favorites of coastal people. And also because they do not have any other source of water, you realize that whatever means of livelihood that they have is affected. So as citizens and the government, what can we do to be able to ensure that there is a balance between development and conservation? We've already talked a lot about the benefits that we received and also the challenges that we face. And so we as citizens, we need to really appreciate the relationship between conservation and development. People who are into mining often say that they go into it because they need a livelihood. But the benefits that they get from mining, because they do not pay attention to the environmental destruction that it causes, it then affects the overall goal of having a developed community where people's well-being is increased and people are able to take care of themselves and their landscapes. And so as citizens, if we appreciate the linkages that are between our livelihoods and the importance of keeping our coastal ecosystems or ocean spaces, and also maintaining a healthy environment, we realize that that balance would be there rather than only focusing on the livelihoods that we get from either terrestrial activities that affect the oceans or just the benefits that we get from the ocean in terms of overharvesting of our fish, as well as destruction of our beachfronts for economic gains. We also need to comply to regulations governing our oceans. There are several regulations that the country has put together to govern our oceans. And one of it is looking at how we can be sustainable in our fisheries management. We have heard about policies of the government to put a ban on fishing. There are closed seasons that have been rolled out. And also there are sanctions that are given to petroleers that actions. But sometimes all the distraction, you realize that it's coming from our lack of understanding or appreciation of these regulations. And so we are the same people who flout these laws. So if we are able to comply with the regulations, then we realize that people will not be overharvesting. They will not be using wrong fishing gear, and they will be keeping our ocean spaces safe for the fish to continue to thrive. We also need to continue to advocate for sustainable measures. There's a lot that we as citizens can do to create the changes that we need to see within our oceans and our coastal landscapes. We have a voice that if we use well, we would be able to get the government to act. And you see that in evidence of new commitments that the government is driving. For instance, Ghana has, as a country, working towards a blue economy. There are efforts that are being made towards getting marine protected areas, all efforts to make sure that our oceans and our coastal spaces are sustainably managed and the resources that we get from them continue to give us the benefits that we receive from them. And then we also need to be able to enhance our adoption of sustainable practices and actively participate in conservation actions. So for instance, when we live around our coastal areas and we realize that mangrove harvesting, which is one of the benefits that we get from our coastal landscapes, is on the increase, we should not only be harvesting those mangroves, but we should be actively involved in restoring those areas. For our beachfronts, where we are interested in promoting beach tourism, and for that reason people are building haphazardly, we should be able to step in and make sure that people are not destroying the spaces that the turtles come to nest, or even the beachfronts that help build coastal resilience. As governments, their role, or our role, again, because we are part of government, is to make sure that the policies that are being formulated prioritize the long-term health of our oceans. And I did mention the blue economy agenda of the government, as well as a marine protected area agenda. Unfortunately, Ghana, as at now, still does not have a marine protected area. And yet we have a target of by 2030 to be able to protect our EZZ. And if we do not hasten or fast track the efforts that we are currently putting in place, it will have dire consequences for us in terms of the long-term health of our ocean. We also, in terms of the government's role, need to acknowledge the role of indigenous knowledge in fostering conservation goals amidst development. We know that within our ocean spaces and coastal communities, we have certain indigenous knowledge that we have, or our ancestors have used over time to help conserve our coastal and marine spaces. And that's one of it is respecting our taboo days. The other is being conscious of the kind of species that we harvest and interventions like that. And there's also some indigenous knowledge that have research implications for us that are currently not being acknowledged. And so if the government acknowledges this, especially as we develop policies and also look at how we enforce our laws, it would go a long way to ensure that our oceans are better conserved. The enforcement of laws is another challenge that our ocean spaces face. And if the laws are being enforced, even as we formulate them, it would really go a long way to help us to make sure that our oceans provide the benefits that we enjoy from them now, as well as in the future. Supporting coastal livelihoods is also another thing that needs to be fostered by the government. We know that the fishermen or the fisheries communities depend highly on the ocean, but we need to be able to introduce to them alternatives. Along every coastal community, you would find at least some patches of land that can be used for farming. And so we need to encourage those as well so that they are not only building their resilience against coastal disasters, but also against issues of food security. Research and innovation is another area that needs to be given some attention. We realize that within our coastal areas, there's a lot of gap that still needs to be filled in terms of our knowledge of our coastal resources, in terms of what species are still within our ocean spaces and what innovations we can come up to be able to build our resilience. These are efforts that have not seen so much progress. And we think that it's important for us to be able to push this. It's very good that Dr. Agyekum's project is working towards some of this. And I believe that with more of such innovations, we will be able to enhance our coastal spaces and make our oceans a better ecosystem for us to benefit from. Now, I'm looking at these roles that we can play. How can we sustain the curiosity of people in terms of how they can contribute to maintaining our ocean spaces? So again, research and awareness is something that I found to be very important. The more that people know what we have and how it's contributing to sustaining our very existence, the more interested they would be in getting to, in taking part in actions that will conserve our ocean spaces. And Dr. Agyekum's project, I believe, would bring us a lot more knowledge on what we do not know on our ocean spaces. He's already shared in his presentation some of the things that we are finding out as a result of the monitoring that they are doing with the satellite images. We also can use ocean recreation to enhance people's curiosity. Surfing is not very popular in Ghana because we do not have very big waves. But I know that there are a few spots in the Western region where people do some limited surfing. Around the Bojo Beach area, the Agyekum area, I know there are even surfing clubs that are along those beaches that people go to surf from time to time. Doug mentioned in his presentation the festivals that have relation to our oceans. And the Bakatui Festival in the Central region, as well as the Homo that he mentioned, are ones that we can use to ignite people's curiosity. We won't just make it about the eating of the fish and the other things, the historical issues around it, but we can use that as a means of raising awareness on the importance of keeping our coasts. We can use activities such as canoe racing to be able to get people to be interested. They learn while they play, and that is one of the effective ways of getting people to be able to appreciate what we can do with our oceans. Other activities include ocean art and installations. So in other beaches or other coastal areas in the East African area, for instance, you would have that they would undertake an activity like a beach cleanup, and whatever they gather out of it, they are able to come up with some installations of the waste that they collect from the beaches. And even recently, there was an activity that was done by an NGO, they called it the Ocean Dance, where they gathered a group of young people at the beach in Accra, and then they had a few dances with storytelling amidst it that was creating awareness on the importance of keeping our oceans. So these are things that are reaching and our water bodies. Then we can use technology. Doug mentioned already in his presentation, but I think that visual reality is one of the strongest ways in which we can bring the ocean home to people. And those who are into gaming or visual reality have very interesting ways of representing the concepts that we have about the ocean. You can be in a visual reality situation and feel as if you are actually swimming in the ocean with the fishes and with the marine turtles and with the seaweeds and all of that. And it's a very beautiful feeling. And once you are able to make that connection, it puts it in your subconscious to be able to do something to save our oceans. And also ocean documentaries are things that we can do to enhance our awareness across different stakeholders, from children to youth to adults. We can use music. Something people are interested in art, and it's one of the ways in which we can use our research technology to be able to get people to connect. And so to conclude, I think that what we should be working towards is getting our oceans to be clean, to be blue, and to have thriving biodiversity, and to continue to provide us with the benefits, rather than the current situation where we have our oceans being polluted by water and by activities of illegal mining. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Jacqueline. That was very insightful. My take home would be that when it comes to sustainability or sustaining our oceans, it's not a one-way system. It's not just the government or just the citizens or just NGOs, but it's a collective effort and a collective team work that we are going to do in order to make this possible. So moving on to our final speaker. He's in the person of Jacob Johnson Atakpa. Please forgive I don't get the surname right. So Jacob is a Ghanaian environmental and then climate activist, serving as the project manager for the Green African Youth Organization on its Zero Waste Cities portfolio. He is currently leading GAYU's scaling of the Zero Waste Cities to other African countries and supports its projects in Accra, Kampala. He provides green jobs for rural communities, diverting waste from landfills and burning pits, and also amplifying the voice of young people and then the informal sector waste workers in the climate change and environmental action. Jacob is active in youth engagement in climate and environmental policies, both in Ghana and globally. Jacob holds a master's degree in climate change and sustainable studies from the University of Ghana, and is also currently pursuing another master's degree in geoinformation science in the same university. As a veteran debater and a public speaker, winning the Ghana University Debate Championship in 2017 and 2018, and also making it to the final of the Pan-African University Debate Champion in 2015, he is passionate about the power of dialogue, public speaking, and debate, and in bringing to the four solutions to the world's pressing problems, notably the three planetary crises. I would like to also add that Jacob is also a negotiator when it comes to, for Ghana, when it comes to the Global Plastic Treaty. So he's one of the key people that are making waves or that are making sure that in terms of plastics and then the components of plastics and even the banning in totality plastics is being achieved. He's part of the key people that are making sure that this happens. So yes, Jacob, you have the floor.
All right, thank you very much, Patrick. I'm super grateful to be here, and thank you very much to WHRO and partners for having me today. And I'm glad that there's quite a number of people on the webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about solutions to plastic pollution through the lens of citizens and cities. And I think a great deal of justice has been done by both speakers before me, and I'd like to stand on, existing protocols before I proceed. So about Green Africa Youth Organization. We've been around for a decade now. And I mean, starting out, the desire was to foster a human niche to follow fundamental natural laws and adopt a sustainable lifestyle that is in harmony with the environment. Because what we see is that humans live in a symbiotic relationship with the environment. So we benefit of the environment and the environment benefits of us. And so it's important for us to always live in harmony with the environment. Our work has, covered several areas: disaster risk reduction, renewable agriculture, energy activism, you name it, even waste. And so there's quite, a huge portfolio when it comes to climate, circular economy, and everything in between. Our mission is to research and provide solutions to the environment's pressing issues through youth empowerment and application, as well as public education. We have 3 country offices, one here in Ghana, where I work, and as well as in Botswana, that's in Gaborone, as well as in Uganda. But due to our hosting of the Youth Climate Council's Global Alliance, we have several projects and sites in various African countries and even outside of Africa, even though our name is Green Africa Youth Organization. Now, when we're talking about waste, it's estimated that currently we have about 2.1 billion tons of waste to be produced in 2023, I beg your pardon. And by 2050, would get to somewhere around 4 billion tons. And this is very alarming because the waste management infrastructure that we have is unable to properly take care of it. And so what that means is that if we have, more and more waste being generated, it's a big problem because, one, we don't have the capacity to deal with it. More importantly, it means that we are creating bigger problems than we can even imagine. In Ghana, and specifically, within our context, we are generating about 14,000 tons daily. And again, it's alarming because look at our waste management architecture and then see how much waste we are generating. That's very huge. And out of this 14,000 tons, Accra alone produces, or the city of Accra, which is not just AMA, but, adjoining municipalities, the city alone, contributes almost 3,000 of those tons. So that's a big challenge. And that's why when you pass, through the city centers and even, the peri-urban areas, you see a lot of waste scattered around. It's because our waste generation is alarming. And, for Ghana, our recycling rate for municipal solid waste is somewhere around 5%. Globally, the recycling rate of plastics is somewhere around 9%, as reported by UNEP. So you can see why there's an alarming issue for anybody who cares about the environment. Urbanization and population growth have been 2 of the major things that have driven the significant increase in waste generation. So, Accra alone, on a yearly basis, produces somewhere around 20,000 tons of plastic waste alone. And that's very alarming. Again, because, we have population growth that is driven by migration and whatnot. And then there's also urbanization as well. And so these are very alarming issues that we need to take a very good look at. And the absence of adequate waste management infrastructure also contributes to the disposal of plastic waste, leading to environmental pollution. So I'm sure many of you have seen videos of somebody, with waste in a sack and waited till it was raining so that they could just dump them in a gutter. There's also the ones where, and this is real, by the way, this is not this is not a folklore that you often be told. I've heard evidence of it on, Gaio's work within communities when people say, yeah, because we don't have the money to pay for the waste, especially during the rainy season, we just wait. Once it starts drizzling, we put our waste outside and just hope that the rains will just sweep them away. And these are very cautioning tales, and they're quite alarming when you get into the communities. And despite the significant amount of waste generated, recycling rate is very low. It's low for a myriad of reasons. We're not incentivizing recycling companies. We're not putting in place adequate infrastructure for recycling. But more importantly, we're not treating waste like what it is. And that's the problem. And many times people say, yeah, out of mind, out of sight. And that applies to waste as well. When city authorities do not see the waste, it's not a problem. And that's why Accra, for example, has a landfill in Nsawam. So all the waste collected within Accra travels all the way to Nsawam, because those in Accra cannot see the waste and we're happy with it. We don't know what happens to it in Nsawam, but we're okay with that. And so a large quantum of that waste ends up in a landfill somewhere, or even worse, it's burnt openly, releasing toxic fumes that harm our upper respiratory tracts and cause other significant public health crisis for us in the urban sectors and even in the rural areas. The use of single-use plastics and excessive packaging in consumer products exacerbate the plastic waste problem. How is that so? Because one item can be packaged with 3-4 layers of packaging, and sometimes you wonder, even gold, even gold that people mine in the earth, it's not packaged in plastic before they go and mine it. Of all the natural resources that people dig out, it's not packaged. Why is it that when we have something, we just want to package, keep on packaging? And that's a big problem, because then fast moving consumer goods latch onto this and generate a lot of plastic waste, and by way of the packaging that they have. And it's many reasons why we have a plastic waste problem. And once the waste is generated, there's several ways in which it leaks into the environment. First one we'll talk about is the burning of plastics. That releases toxic fumes like dioxins and furans into the air, and then we inhale them, which causes the public health crisis for us. The second one is that it pollutes nearby water bodies through airborne particles settling in rain and runoff, because the scientists will tell us, matter cannot be destroyed nor created. It can only be shifted from one form to the other. So when you burn, you don't dissipate the matter. It doesn't vanish. It just moves from one form to the other. And so it also harms coastal communities that have poor air quality and respiratory issues. The second way is that it is usually leaks through improper dumping. What does this look like? Putting it into a gutter, lagoon, sea, river, wherever, and then it washes into the environment. Also clogs drainage systems, causing flooding that carries waste into coastal waters. So not all the flooding is because we've built into waterways. Some of the flooding is because we built on waterways. Other parts of the flooding is that we don't have proper drainage systems. Other parts of the flooding is also for the very few drainage systems that we have, we keep clogging those with impermeable waste materials as well, and that causes another problem. And then we have the unsanitary environments for both humans and marine ecosystems. The third one is leakage into marine life. Specifically, marine animals like turtles, fishes, seabirds mistake plastics for food. They eat, they choke, they starve, they die. That's a big problem. And it's not just some of these plastics that we use on land. Sometimes even the fishermen themselves discard their fishing gear, or as the technical experts will call it, ghost gear, into the seas when they are no longer useful. And then that also causes problems for marine life. Microplastics also enter the food chain. And because humans are at the top of the food chain, fishes and whatnot will eat the plastic, and then we eat it. Because the plastic will bioaccumulate, it will eventually bioaccumulate in us, and it stays there till we die, because we're on top of the food chain, because nobody eats us. So it stays there and we die. 20, 30 years from now, we're getting diagnosed with different kinds of diseases, and we forget that it's because of microplastics. Then there's also the threat to coral reefs and seagrass beds that get smothered, reducing oxygen supply and destroying biodiversity. The fourth kind of plastic leakage, I beg your pardon, I'll talk about, is the impact for Ghana. So plastic waste in Accra and other coastal cities flows into the Gulf of Guinea, which is the part of the Atlantic Ocean that borders our land. And then the fishers also often report that they have reduced catches. And beyond the reduced catches, there's also the threat of, entangled nets and all that. And sometimes they come back with plastics that are being cut. And I've often seen it around the Pram area, where you're looking into the sea. There's a very black film on the sea. You think, oh, it's just, light and all that. It's not light. It's a thin film of plastic bags, single-use black carrier bags that is floating on top of the ocean. And that's a big problem for us as well. And then beaches are littered with plastics, also deter tourism, because who wants, and I'm sure Patrick wouldn't want to go to a beach like he used to go to and see a lot of plastics there. He'll be discouraged and will not come back. So imagine somebody spending money to come to Ghana for vacation, going to the beach and then seeing it there. Of course, they wouldn't want to come back. And so these are all ways in which plastic leaks into the environment and creates problem for us. So all these, the fourth one, the impact, is where we reduce or harm the economy that we're living in, and that's also problematic. Now, strategies for communities and youth. Three things we want to talk about. The first one is the awareness, education, and youth leadership development. So it's important for young people to build capacity to be able to deal or engage in some issues. And Patrick mentioned that I'm one of the folks who are, negotiating the Global Plastics Treaty for Ghana. And it's important because, you need to build capacity. If you don't understand what you're talking about, you don't get invited to talk about it. And so you need to build capacity, know the ins and outs of the plastic crisis, the plastic industry, for example, and that's how you build capacity and make yourself an expert in the space. Then you're able to speak about it. And one of the recommendations I'll give is like Gaio Eco Club. that, occasionally builds capacity of young people, just not just young people, but students, etc., who want to learn about, how they can take charge of the environment and be leaders when it comes to change. There's also local innovation support, supporting your recyclers, giving tax break to small scale recyclers and whatnot, and ensuring that all these people are able to work within the ecosystem that they find themselves in and create solutions by, making money from it. And the third and final one is community-based zero waste models, like the one that, for example, I manage here in Accra and even in other places like, Kampala and Gaborone, where we have community-led, local government partnered, decentralized waste management systems that, supports the creation of a material recovery facility where separated waste at source from the household or institutions is brought, and then you're able to recycle. Once you recycle, reduce the, the leakages where plastic is able to get into the environment. And, for the local pathways or the collaborative pathways that, we can engage in to be able to find solutions, you need to have participatory environmental planning. What does that look like? Local governments especially, and I keep referring to local governments because in Ghana and, more like other sub-Saharan African areas, local governments have the mandate over municipal solid waste. So they have the mandate to be able to take or deal with our sanitation problems. So in environmental planning, you need to, have all the actors on board and have everybody who, interacts with the problem or has a semblance of what the solution to look like come on board and ensure that we have a proper pathway for dealing with the problem. There's also policy alignment and education. And so I always say that we need to apply bottom-up approaches to solving these things. We cannot do top-down because, at the top, you find the policy and whatnot, but you're not the ones dealing with the problem. It's the grassroots people who are dealing with the problem. So get what the grassroots guys are saying first before you move it up and escalate the issues. And there's community-led conservation initiatives like the one Dr. Agyekum mentioned about saying they're going to Pram tomorrow to be able to, to do a community-led engagement on how they can protect the mangroves and the coastal ecosystems around that side. Then there's also the environmental education and public awareness. For example, this that we're on, letting people know what the impacts are so that we can take action and are enabled to do so. Then there's, the joint monitoring and accountability mechanisms where we don't leave it to only central government or only local government, but community members are also involved in the process so that we can call people out where they go wrong and ensure that they don't do wrong. And then sustainable livelihood, that are alternatives to the current ones. And I think Ms. Jacqueline also mentioned that about, people having alternative livelihoods that are sustainable. So, we have a closed fishing season, or at least had, that was implemented, I think, a year or two ago. So during the closed fishing season, what else should these people be doing? Because they can't go and fish. We need to give them alternative livelihoods that ensure that sustainability is in the mix. And finally, incentives for private sector sustainability so that people who want to make a business around this are able to do so. And then when they do so, they ensure that they are dealing with the problem, but also making some cool cash out of it. Now, when it comes to you and I, what can we do? We avoid plastic bags, straws, plastic bottles, and we choose reusable alternatives because for every plastic that you refuse, it's plastic that you have prevented from getting into the environment. And that's important for you and I. Participate in cleanup campaigns. So as Dr. Agyekum is going to, Pram, you'll be able to go with him or, have your colleagues within the neighborhood and engage in the cleanup and, and ensure that the community and the streets, your riverbanks are safe. Then there's also the plastic waste separation at home. So at home, you have at least 3 bins, one for your organic waste, the second one for your recyclables. That's where you have some of the plastics that are recyclable, electronics, textiles, paper, whatnot. And then your third bin is, your residual waste or your household hazardous waste, tissues that cannot be recycled, sanitary towels, what have you, needles, syringes, plaster, and whatnot that you use at the household that cannot be recycled. So those go into your residual waste. Then you also need to advocate and educate. So communities, for example, and just recently, it was very close to the office, and it was very strange because you would think that of all the work that we've done around the office area, people will stop burning. And this house was just right beside the office, and they were burning, and I could smell it. So I didn't know what it was. So I looked out the window and I saw that it was just the house that was just next to us that were burning. And then I walked in and had a conversation with them. I'm like, yeah, we've come to this house several times, but I didn't know that guy because I didn't see him. And we've done the education and all that. He says, oh, he's new. He just moved in. I'm like, explains why. And so we had a full-blown conversation. He He came to the office next day, told him what to do and whatnot. And now he's having informal sector actors pick up his waste and to advocate and educate, raise an awareness through different media. And so now this is they call it the age of influencers. This is the age of influencers. So everybody's an influencer in one way or the other. Let people know what you're doing and how it harms the environment and whatnot. And do a lot of these things to make sure that people get to learn. And then support local recycling initiatives. So for example, I buy my soap from a local person, and they make the soap out from cocoa waste. I think they're called the pod. I've just lost on the name, but Patrick was the one who put me on, by the way. And so yeah, I buy from local businesses that are ensuring that they are repurposing waste and ensuring that this waste doesn't go to landfill. And it's good for me. I think it's called the climate pod. I think I just remembered that. It's called a climate pod, where they use waste material to make soap so that it prevents it from going to landfills. Then there's the cities and local authorities, because we're talking two lenses, individuals and then cities or local authorities. We need to ensure that our cities and local government develop efficient waste collection systems. What does that look like? Providing bins, separated bins, properly labeled so that people can know where to dump what waste. Ensure regular pickups, because many of the times the problem is that the skip containers are there, they don't get filled. And because nobody wants to add on to the problem, they think it's okay to burn. And then when they burn, they compound the problem instead. We need to also support local recycling hubs by ensuring we provide enough land and space for people to establish material carrier facilities. They also need to enforce anti-littering, open burning, and waste disposal bylaws by making sure that they activate the environmental health and sanitation officers to implement fines and penalties for illegal dumping and open burning, because we also need to improve the air quality that we have, but also prevent waste from getting into our marine ecosystems, and support plastic recycling enterprises, partner with private sector to invest in plastic recovery infrastructure as well as plastic recycling infrastructure. And finally, engage communities in waste planning. So the communities need to know what days the waste are picked up, what kind of waste they can put in what kinds of bins, and ensure that all these things are done. And I mean, even though we're talking about the lens of citizens and cities, we also need to engage a bit on the global side. So, and I always say this, like from local to global or bottom up. So while we are doing all these things, we also need to through our influencers, put pressure on government and ensure that when they are negotiating the plastics treaty, they call for more strict adherence to plastic safe laws or environmental safeguards. And while we are doing all these things, I always say everywhere I go that the solution to the plastic crisis is not more recycling, is the cutting down of plastic production. And so, and I always use this analogy: if you have a bucket and you're fetching water from a tap, and your bucket is overflowing, the same thing to do would not be to keep fetching from your bucket and putting it elsewhere, but instead to shut the tap. So if we have a waste management architecture that is unable to manage all the waste or all the plastic that we're doing, what do we need to do? We need to turn off where the waste is coming. And that looks like cutting down plastic production and ensuring that the water in the bucket stays there. Or we, in the case of plastic pollution, the waste management architecture is able to deal with only the waste that is in the system, and that is the way to go. And so this is, just another slide on reducing personal footprints. I beg your pardon. So refuse what you don't need, say no to single-use plastics, necessary packaging, rethink your consumption, make mindful swaps. So if you have, and we had a lot of this growing up, the hand-me-down culture, where if one cloth of yours is not fitting, you give it to a younger sibling, even a cousin, for example. These days it's not the way, because fast fashion has made a lot of these clothes not even wearable. So you can't even have a full wear out of your clothes. So you just need to dump it. Compost your organic waste, sort your waste properly, push for policy and institutional changes at the local government and central government level. Practice repair, repurpose, and reuse. Extend the life of what you already own. Support local zero waste initiatives, and compost at your local level, or even engage in community recycling hubs and advocates within your own circle. Host Twitter spaces, webinars like these ones, Instagram lives and whatnot. Just show people what you're doing, because there's a lot of inspiration out of that. And these are some of the things that we can do by ourselves as citizens, or encourage local governments to be able to do. So thank you very much to organizers for this opportunity, and I'm super grateful that I've been here to share the knowledge that I have working within the space with all of you. Super grateful for your attention. That's you, Patrick.
you so much, Jacob. Very grateful. That was very insightful. A few of my take homes was if you want to be called to the table, the decision table, you have to build your capacity, you have to learn, you have to build your knowledge, you have to read more. And also, we have to avoid and refuse the single-use plastics. If you want to solve the issue of plastic pollution, it's not about recycling. It's about cutting down on the production, which is already ongoing. So you should cut down on production, and then the discussions on recycling will be on the existing plastics that are already in the system. So thank you so much. And the last thing was that we should share whatever we are doing. So if you are taking any simple step, if for a particular day, a particular week, you did away with plastics, you can share online, you can share, you can motivate someone. Maybe there are a group of people or there's someone on the street or someone within your network that looks up to you. Such simple steps are things that you might not think that people are paying attention to. But you'll be surprised that there's someone because of you would not take single-use plastics or stop the use of plastics. So thank you so much for the insight. We'll quickly move into the question and answer, the panel discussion. Then we'll have Q&A section. I'm sure most of you have a few questions jotted down you'd want to ask the speakers. So quickly, Ms. Jacqueline, I would want to know, how does illegal mining upstream affect marine life and our coastal water qualities here in Ghana?
Okay, thank you very much. So, illegal mining upstream pollutes our marine spaces. You know, water moves downwards. So if there's mining upstream, it really goes downstream to affect whatever is down there. And what is very disturbing is that this illegal mining happens not only in terrestrial areas, but it affects our estuaries where there's exchange between the fresh water and also the ocean water. So that interface where we are having our fish spawning, we are having our coastal resilient infrastructure like mangroves, then become affected because the pollution has run along the chain and then it's affecting everything that comes its way. So the pollution is really one very big impact that illegal mining has. And besides that, the fact that it kills marine life and also affect the livelihoods that are along our beach spaces. Thank you.
Dr. Agyekum, I don't know if you don't mind adding a bit to that, and whilst at it, you maybe also touch on what are the economic and ecological consequences of wetland destruction on coastal resilience.
Well, yeah, I guess Jackie has said much, so I wouldn't want to go back to that. It's generic. You pollute up there, it comes down because rain, runoffs, that kind of thing would send these harmful chemicals into the coastal and oceanic systems. But then how the economic implications of destructive activities within coastal systems that affect wetlands and so forth. I mean, it's very, very obvious. A good example is how you realize the amount of money our government spend in putting up these defense walls, revetment and so forth. That money could have been channeled into schools. You go to a lot of coastal communities and it's pathetic. There's the school infrastructure, the academic infrastructure, there are no libraries, that kind of thing. So the point we are trying to make is, if we protect and ensure that coastal systems are resilient, they can stand the test of time, then we are not going to spend monies on ensuring that they stay safe. We can send those monies out into other, or channel those monies into other things. And I think it's important that as we think through what we need to do within the ocean space, we must constantly know that our survival is not just about our ability to be in that space. No, it's connected to so many things, and we must work hard to protect the ocean space. It's also important in the sense that ecologically there are a lot of interactions that happens within coastal systems, lagoons, estuaries, deltas, and so forth. A lot of the rich biodiversity that we see within the ocean space is driven by how well we conserve or we ensure that these microsystems within the coast are cleaner, safer, pristine, and so forth. So if we don't do that, obviously we will not have anything in the oceans to go after. There wouldn't be those very nice fishes that we want to have on our table. So it's important that we take a very good look at some of these things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agyekum. Jacob, quickly, what are some of what are some of the success stories that you can share, some promising policies in Ghana regarding marine conservation and even plastic pollution that you think that is worth emulating or worth sharing to you? Hello, Jacob, can you hear me?
Apologies, Patrick. Sorry, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Great. So thank you very much for the question. So I was saying that when it comes to the La Enclave, for example, the local authorities have put in place certain measures to ensure that they reduce plastic leakage into the environment. And I think that for a lot of the beach resorts that we have, beach resorts, pubs, and when you go to the La Pleasure Beach area there, many of those places should, try to cut down on their use of single-use plastic, because it's one of the major sources of, the leakage that we're talking about. But I think Ghana's National Plastic Management Policy, NPMP, is one of the very potent ways in which the government is trying to solve the issue of plastics. And yesterday, I listened with a lot of excitement when the president announced that very soon we're going to, put an end to the importation and even local manufacturing of styrofoam plastic. And yeah, while I want to, err on the side of caution, I also think that, for these things, it's very important that we don't jump just at the thought of, oh, we're going to the president said we're going to ban plastic and so that is it. I'm thinking that styrofoam plastics are just one element of the plastic products that are problematic, and so we need to do more in that regard. Even though I'll commend him for being possibly the first head of state to mention this, there's still more we need to do. And at this stage of our development, it's very easy to pluck on the low-hanging fruits, but we need to aim higher and deal a bit more complex with with the polymers. Well, we need to cut down the polymer importation, as well as even local use and whatnot. And so these are some of the things that I think we need to do. And I think the NPMP, if it's properly enforced and managed, I think it will be one of the very great policies that we have, because it's a very robust one, even across the sub-region. Is very much hailed by colleagues in the sub-region. So I think it's one of the ways to go if we really want to beat plastic pollution.
Thank you so much, Jacob. So quickly to all our speakers, I think starting with Mrs. Jacqueline, in what ways do you think we can sustain public wonder and curiosity about our oceans whilst inspiring protection?
Okay, thank you very much. One of the things I have come to realize across my years of working with communities is that consistency is key. We need to be consistent in our messaging. We need to come up with very innovative and catchy messages that would get people thinking. And one of the strategies that has worked over the years is the use of art, music, things that people can do with their hands, how people can repurpose one item into another to be able to sustain the interest. I was in a program where we used music to be able to create an awareness message on how to reduce plastic use. And we did this in the local language, and people were very excited when we shared it with them. So we can do that. Also, research is another thing. There's a lot that is still not known, even among scientists, about our ocean spaces. So we need to be able to invest a lot more in the research and then come up with the interesting findings. There may be new species that we do not even know about, that when people hear, it would cause them to be interested, to want to take actions to conserve our ocean spaces. There may be new information that we would come up with that would lead to innovations that would get people hands-on to conserve our ocean spaces. And art installations are things that are not too difficult to do, because you are just using what is within your environment to come up with something beautiful to tell a story. And as Jacob said, to keep promoting actions that would get people to be conscious of their everyday living, in things like reducing plastic use, even accepting plastic when you go out or when you want to buy something. People should remember to carry their bottles and all of that. So these are things that we can do. On the issue specifically about the mining, we need to be able to create the connections between the mining, people's livelihood, and how it's affecting our environment. A lot of the time people think, oh, I live by the ocean, mining is not really happening near me, so why should I be concerned about it? But from all the media reportage that we've seen, there's a lot that mining has done to our oceans, and everybody needs to come on board to ensure that the mining and illegal mining activities are stopped. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Jacob, will you quickly want to take that same question? How do you think we can sustain the public wonder and curiosity whilst preserving the oceans?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I really, I think Ms. Jacqueline has mentioned it all. But engaging in activities like these, like this webinar that we're on now, it's amazing. And I think it's one of the ways that we can do it. But beyond these things, it's usually many times engaging with grassroots. And I say there's a lot of indigenous knowledge that's in communities all over the place. And and I like to say we're only truly moving forward when we're marrying scientific knowledge with indigenous knowledge, because many times this indigenous knowledge is rooted in some level of scientific rigor that is often ascribed to some taboo or some superstition. But looking beyond it, you'll find that it's really very robust science. And so you probably want to engage more communities, and in engaging the communities, don't go as someone with all the responses, go as somebody who wants to learn. And when you open your mind and you open yourself up to learning, there's a lot of knowledge that you can learn. And even on the work that I do managing this project, a lot of the things that come out when you engage communities are just out of the box. You never think that communities have this wealth of expertise that is sitting in the communities. But so when you go to communities, open your mind up to learn, and always try to amplify the efforts of the communities. Let us not get caught up in this whole this savior complex or savior-esque complex and try to be the ones solving all the problems. Let's go with open minds and open hearts to want to learn, and communities will teach us things that are way beyond our understanding. So that will be my contribution. And thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Because of time, I see some people already have questions. So we'll quickly switch to the audience. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. You can also type your questions out in the comment section and read them out for our speakers to respond to. Yeah, Tony, please, you have the floor. Yeah, hello, Tony, can you hear me?
Yes, was that, you said Tony? Okay. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. My name's Tony. I'm not from Ghana. I'm from French Guyana on the other side of the Atlantic. I had the honor of participating in the ISTS this year in Ghana. And I also had the honor to go work with Eric from Wild Seas in Azim to collect some fishermen's ecological data on the increase in fishing effort over the last 4 decades in Ghanaian waters. It turns out that the results were quite scary. We interviewed only 30 fishermen, but the data very clearly indicated that fishing effort per boat had increased at least 10 times per boat. And this wasn't even taking into account the number of boats that increased over the last 40 years. So if you're keeping this in mind and you're looking at the size of the mesh of the boats, and you're also thinking about the trawlers who are encroaching on the non-zones for them, so coastal fishing zones. The situation seems very bleak. One of the things that I noticed is that the fishermen considered that their voice was not being heard, and they appreciated the possibility of sharing this information. Hence, two fishermen and one fishmonger came to the ISTS to expose their situation, and they were very explicit about the problems that they were facing, including the plastic, the overfishing, the absence of management measures. And when there were management measures such as the ban on building new boats, or of increasing the net length, or using purse seines, there were no means to be able to enforce those regulations. So we definitely saw boats being constructed. We definitely saw mesh that were too small, and it's a very difficult situation. I think it would be very interesting seeing that we did this work in just 2 days of data collection, because it's just takes 6 questions to be able to infer the increase in fishing effort. It would be interesting to see this work carried out along the entire coast to determine if there was any areas along the coast where the marine resources are more abundant than they are in Azim, so that you could start by maybe preserving these areas where there would be resources left. This could serve as a pilot. This type of work should probably be done on the entire west coast of Africa, knowing that these very gigantic and uncontrolled Chinese trawlers that are often operating with licenses that are given by Ghanaian brothers of yours are operating all over West Africa, and they're completely unhinged. So we provided some cameras and some GPSs to some of these fishermen, because the information that they provide is only anecdotal and there is no proof. And so the idea is that after the rainy season, they would start taking pictures and having GPS positions of these boats, so that you would have irrefutable proof, not only within your country and for your government and for you to work with, but also so that some international attention could be paid to the matter. Thank you for your time. I wish you good luck, and anything that we can do from French Guiana, let us know.
Thank you so much, Tani, and thank you for the wonderful work you did with the Azim team. Hopefully, the local team here in Ghana will take up more researches along that line. Some of them are already going on, but this is one that will pay particular attention to. I think there's something Dr. Agyekum is also working around. He's more using the satellite to monitor some of these illegal activities. So with the cameras coming on board, I'm sure the data will complement each other and we'll have a more comprehensive information or research. So thank you so much on that. Yeah, so if you have any questions, you can raise your hands. If you have any contribution as well, you can put in the comment section. So while we wait for any questions, Dr. Agyekum, I also want to take your view on the last question. What do you think are some of the ways that, or how do you think that citizens and governments can collaborate to ensure a balance between development and conservation?
Well, it's kind of there are various aspects of this, but in my opinion, I think governments need to do a bit more with respect to their readiness and providing resources and putting in structures that would allow our ocean resources to be conserved. It's not just enough hearing our politicians being on radio sets or television reading out very nice scripts on what can be done, but then they need to go out there and put their acts together. For instance, let's take monitoring and control and surveillance within ocean space. I don't think currently we even do have a very functional electronic monitoring system. That isn't good. I mean, what it means is that people can just move into our EEZ, do any kind of fishing, go scot-free, and at the end of the day, still make profit from an illegality. This is not enough. So we expect our government agencies, people that we have put or we have mandated to protect our resources to do a bit more. I also feel citizens should not feel too far away from the problem. They need to be a bit more concerned. I mean, when you see something wrong, you have to say something. I like the fact that Tony had come around, he's giving cameras. It means yes, someone elsewhere wants to get something done. And we, the locals, we also have to start putting our acts together, working hard to ensure that the ocean space feels cleaner and safer. So that this is my opinion.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Agyekum. I see there are no questions. So I'll give and if you have any final words, any final thoughts, Jacob, Jacqueline. So I think Jacqueline can go for if you have any final words or something you want to share.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who's been on the call and stayed on. What I'd want to say as my final words is that we should all see ourselves as ambassadors of change, and that the efforts that we make can go a long way to make the changes that we really want to see. So it's us thinking about the ripple effect of the things that we are able to do to see the end product or the long-term vision that we have for our oceans and our spaces. It can be very challenging when one person is pushing forward and then the efforts are not being appreciated or it's not being reflected in the outcomes that we want to see. So keep being ambassadors and recruit other people to join the ambassador chain so that we can really go far in keeping our oceans and our marine spaces safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Jacob.
Yes, thank you very much, Patrick. And final words, I think I'll say, innovation is important, but new is not always better. So, we're innovating and we're doing all this amazing stuff, but new is not always better. Let's go back to the basics. Let's do a lot more reusables. Let's do a lot more sustainable packaging and try to avoid packaging as much as possible, because even for other kinds of packaging, we're, creating waste. So yeah, new is not always better. Back to the basics. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Jacob, your last statement made me remember back in the days when you're going to school, you have your own bowls, your own cups. Even when you're going to buy cocoa, there's 5 cups. You take it along to the cocoa seller and then your porridge is served in those cups. So I think that it's time we really went back to the basics. So Dr. Agyekum, we'll take your final words and also maybe you touch a bit on a question in the comment section asking that there were some reports or incidents about the fishing folks, the Chinese fisher folks fishing within our waters during the close season. Are you aware of such illegalities? And to the best of your knowledge, are they being persecuted or are some actions being taken against them?
So from the data that I analyzed, I don't see much of transshipment because that is one of the things I work on now. There are a few behaviors that seems to suggest transshipment, and we share that information. I have not read about any prosecution or no one has contacted me for further details on some of the things that we have reported. So that is all I can say on that matter. But then with respect to your first question or my closing remarks, for me, it's also important that the solutions that we try to develop, we co-design with the people that the solutions are meant for. If you don't do that, you will design something that will not be fit for purpose. And it's about time that we constantly engage fisher folks, communities, policymakers, and work with them to create what would work for them. And if we are able to do that, I guess we get closer to solving the problem that hits us on our faces. Yes. So those would be my closing remarks. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here with us. See you some other time.
Thanks so much, Dr. Agyekum. There's a question in the comment section. What strategies can be used to engage the education system to train students to be environment protectors and conservationists? So I think Jacqueline and Jacob, I don't know which one of you would want to take this one on. What strategies can be used to engage the education system to train students to be environmental protectors and conservationists?
Okay, thank you very much. For me, I would say that one of the key strategies that works is the hands-on. So even as students are being trained in the classroom with all of the theories, they should be given the opportunity to go out and test those theories in practice and also experience what happens in practice. Experiencing it helps bring out the innovations that we are talking about. It may not always be new, but it can help us rethink the solutions that we have. And giving people the practical experience also brings home the message that they are just not learning things in the classroom, but they are able to build the synergies between what they are learning and what happens in the communities or in practice within our ocean spaces. So practice with the theory is one sure way strategy that I would recommend. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jacob, do you want to speak on that a bit, or you think?
Yeah, just something very similar to what Ms. Jacqueline had mentioned. Evidence-based learning. It's very important. Evidence-based learning. I think that's the key strategy to use. Let them see what they're learning. It's it's enough to sit in a classroom and do all the theory, but go to the field, see what we're talking about. Go to the lab, see how small the micro and nanoplastics are. Then they can be able to properly appreciate how fishes see them and then eat them, thinking that they are worms or they are other microorganisms that they can eat. So yeah, evidence-based learning is key.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mrs. Jacqueline, and then Jacob. So to do as the honors, I would invite Dr. Andrew Agyekum to give us the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And I just want to thank the Wildlife and Human Resource Organization and the partners, that's the WHRO Young Scientists, also the Coastal Association for Neighborhood. We also have the Pure Plastics, University of Ghana, specifically the Department of Marine and Fisheries Science, ESL Consulting, MarCNoWA, the GMES Africa program, and the African Union for hosting such an important event. I want to say a big thank you to Jacqueline. I've known Jacqueline for about 10 or maybe more years. We've worked on several projects together, sitting in small canoes and crossing rivers in Winneba are some of the fond memories that I have with her in the field. I also want to thank Kwame very well. Kwame and I also go way back, being almost, we were students. Kwame was a year ahead of me in the university, and we did almost everything together. And we almost have the same surname. So sometimes it's nice that students can get confused. And Jacob, thank you so much for being a great partner. We work sometimes with Gaio, and I'm happy that when we reached out, you were able to come and share with us your depth of knowledge. I want to thank also all the participants for making time to join us. For me, one of the beauties of such programs is the information that the experts pour out from their hearts. And if I should take us back into the Bible, for those of us who are a bit religious, then you remember the parable of the sower, which is found in Matthew 13, the verse 1 to 23. Today, the seed has been sowed. According to the parable, some of the seed fell on good soil, others fell on bad soil. We've had a lot of knowledge, which to me is a good seed. I'm just hoping that you'll be the good soil on which this message will fall so that it can be propagated. And that is the fruit that we want to see. And I want to make a call to all of us that you begin to ask yourself, what can I do differently because of the message that I heard today? What can I do differently because of these interventions that the experts have shared with me? And if you begin to ask yourself these questions, it is only then that you can be encouraged to take actions in support of Mother Earth and then the ocean that provides so much resources for us. A few things we can do and a few things that I also picked from the speakers is that we need to tell others. And for me, that is the take-home message. And I'm happy to see a lot of us here. I'm just encouraging you to use the power that you have. Each and every one of us have some amount of power. Dr. Agyekum from the University of Ghana has the power of the academia to conduct research. GAIO and Rocha Ghana, that is Jacob and Jacqueline respectively, also have the power of having a voice that can speak to government and speak to authorities. Let us use it to move forward the conservation agenda. When it comes to the youth, you have the greatest power of all, which is the social media. I hope that this message will be shared on all your social media platforms, and then be the voice for the voiceless, which is the ocean that is crying out to us today and asking us for protection. But then you can't do all this, you can't speak, you can't educate others if you yourself is not educated enough. And so I'm encouraging you to read more about the ocean and the resources, as well as the threats and how you can help to contribute so that together we can speak for the ocean and Mother Earth. I want to remind you of what one of my greatest motivators said, and that is Madiba Nelson Mandela. He said, education is the most powerful weapon with which you can make an impact. And so if you want to make an impact for the ocean, I encourage you to educate yourself and educate others. And then after you've done this, the other action, activity you need to do is to take action. And that is why I'm happy that again, WHRO is hosting a beach cleanup event tomorrow in Pram Pram to help promote the ocean quality, the habitat that is for most of the biodiversity that we have on planet Earth. Pram Pram was chosen because it is one of the key nesting sites for sea turtle, and then the beach also will help to promote good hygiene for the fish because it's a landing site. For this, I want to thank the partners again. We have the Coastal Association for Neighborhood, and I know that Gwendolyn is on this line. There is a community association that has been cleaning the beaches in the area for so many months now. And I'm happy that Jacob said that we should involve the communities. So with the Coastal Association for Neighborhood, we are already involving the communities in this agenda. We thank EPA also for joining this movement. And today they just called that they are bringing a whole bus of their staff just to show that they still are committed to protecting the environment. The Pure Plastic, ESL, EcoZoil also is always available to provide materials and also support. And of course, the Department of Marine and Fishery Science, University of Ghana. And I thank GMES Africa, Dr. Agyekum so much, as well as the African Union and everybody who can make time to join us in Pram Pram tomorrow. I want to say thank you once again, WHRO, for hosting these events, and I hope that more of it is in the pipeline. Thank you, everyone, and I wish you a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
Right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kwame. And thank you all so much for joining today's webinar. We hope to see you in our subsequent engagements. The recordings will be available on WHRO's YouTube channel. I've shared a link you can subscribe to in case it's uploaded, you'll get the notification. And thank you all, and thank you to all our partners for making this possible. I hope to see most of us tomorrow at the beach cleanup at Pram Pram. So once again, thank you all so much, and it's bye for now.
Thank you, and bye.
Okay. I don't know if, hello, can we take a group picture? Can we all quickly turn on our cameras and take a quick group photo?
Patrick, at what point are we taking the photo? You need to prompt us.
Jeez.
So thank you all so much. Thank you all for joining.